You're on the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. I want to talk to you a little bit about reparations. Massachusetts Representative Ayanna Pressley appeared to call for reparations for the country's black citizens during a House floor speech last Thursday. The far-left Democrat and member of the self-appointed Squad spoke at length about a perceived systemic bias against black Americans. Pressley, describing the Black Lives Matter movement as a mandate on all America, said it's time for the country to pay us what you owe us. She said, I rise today on behalf of every black family that has been robbed of a child, on behalf of every family member that has been forced to see their loved one lynched on national TV, driving while black, jogging while black, sleeping while black. We have been criminalized for the very way we show up in the world. Under the harsh gaze of far too many, my black body has been seen as a threat, always considered armed. Centuries of institutionalized oppression will not be undone overnight, for racism in America is as structural as the marble pillars of this very institution. With the power of the pen, she said, we must legislate accountability, dismantle these systems, and move in the direction of justice and healing. It's time. Pay us what you owe us. Our black skin is not a crime. It's a beautiful robe of nation builders. Oh, and a Reuters Ipsos poll conducted last week found that only 1 in 5 respondents said they support using taxpayer money to pay damages to descendants, generations removed from enslaved people in the United States. 3 to 5. Newsweek's.com Diana Berry is Associate Professor of History and African, I guess it's Professor of African History. Anyway, she's a black woman and an African who teaches diaspora studies at the University of Texas at Austin. She writes, black people think they know everything about slavery in the United States, but they don't. They think the majority of African slaves came to the American colonies, but they didn't. They talk about 400 years of slavery, but it wasn't. They claim all Southerners owned slaves, but they didn't. However, some argue it was all a long time ago, but it wasn't. She highlights the popular myths, one of them being that the majority of African captives came to what became the United States. She says the truth is that slavery was not unique to the United States. It is a part of almost every nation's history, from Greek and Roman civilizations to contemporary forms of human trafficking. The American part of the story lasted a lot fewer years than the 400 in popular vogue. It was really only 246 years, from 1619 to 1865. That was when the 13th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified. That black people continued to be viewed as property or less important, admittedly lasted a lot longer. Most historians use 1619 as a starting point. 20 Africans, referred to as servants, arrived in Jamestown, Virginia on a Dutch ship. It's important to note, however, that they were not the first Africans on American soil. Africans first arrived in America in the late 16th century, not as slaves, but as explorers, together with Spanish and Portuguese. One of the best known of these African conquistadors was a man called Estaviancio, who traveled throughout the southeast from present-day Florida to Texas. Truth is, only roughly 25% of all Southerners owned slaves. The fact that 1/4 of the Southern population were slaveholders is still shocking to many. The truth brings historical insight to modern conversations about inequality and reparations. This black woman is talking about why everyone has to pay. reparations, and continuing benefits to every person of color in this country when so few bought and sold slaves? My opinion? The laws of this country allowed for slavery until a Republican president put his presidency and popularity on the line to get rid of it. Willing to fight a war to do it. Now it's the Republicans who are painted with the brush of slave owner. The political party most anxious to pay reparations to the descendants of these slaves represent the very political party that kept them enslaved, long after it became common knowledge that slavery was alive and well in these newly minted United States of America almost 100 years after our break with Great Britain as a sovereign nation. The Republican Party began in 1854 as an anti-slavery party. The GOP was founded in 1854 by opponents of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, a law that allowed for the potential expansion of slavery into the Western territories. A party that supported classical liberalism opposed this expansion of slavery and supported economic reform. Their first president, Abraham Lincoln. Classic liberalism? The term is used to designate an ideology advocating private property, an unhampered market economy, the rule of law, constitutional guarantees of freedom of religion and of the press, and international peace based on free trade. Classic liberalism. Until about 1900, this ideology was generally simply known as liberalism. Modern liberalism today uses that term to hide who and what they are. The Dred Scott case of 1857 saw the U.S. Supreme Court hold that the U.S. Constitution was not meant to include American citizenship for black people, regardless of whether they were enslaved or free. And so the rights and privileges that the Constitution confers upon American citizens could not apply to them. 7 U.S. Supreme Court justices voted in favor, and all of them were Democrats. The 2 dissenting votes came from Republicans. It was in a day when Democrats did not see people of color as equals. That appraisal was held by President Lyndon Baines Johnson in the 1960s. Of course, he appeared to hold all people in mutual disdain. In 1865, Democrat President Andrew Jackson opposed integration in violation of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution. Democrats did not elect a man of color to anything until 1935. Democrats instituted black codes. People of color may not own property, run businesses, must pay poll taxes, and take literacy tests. Today it is liberal Democrats who are fighting for the rights of black people. Does it make you wonder? Their values have not changed. They still hold to the old socialist viewpoint. They don't seem to value anyone other than their own. And today the Democrat Party is being hijacked by people who are more liberal than their leadership. We watch the leadership playing catch-up, seeking to be more liberal than the newcomers in order to hold power, and we wonder, where is this taking us? The Democrats filibustered a law that would make black folks equal for 70 days. And that was in the 1960s. They lost. And Lyndon Baines Johnson got to inaugurate this new program that was going to benefit these people so tremendously, and bought the cachet that the Democrats are our saviors. The Democrats were their slave owners. right up into the 60s.